Hyundai has gone rapidly upmarket in recent years. Just a decade ago, the most expensive model it sold in the UK was the Santa Fe, and that topped out at around £33,000. Today, a range-topping Santa Fe will cost you more than 58k. But even that seems pretty cheap compared to what's coming very soon, because the new Ioniq 9 is expected to start at around £63,000. And if you want a top-of-the-range version, you'll need to find around 75k. Has Hyundai got a little bit big for its boots a little bit too quickly, or is this worth every penny? I'm in South Korea to drive the finished production version of the Ioniq 9 for the very first time. I'll be doing more than 500 miles in freezing cold conditions over the next couple of days to find out everything you need to know about Hyundai's new flagship. So stay watching and don't forget to subscribe for lots more new car reviews, reveals and road trips. Now, given that this will soon be Hyundai's most expensive model in the UK, it probably won't surprise you to learn that it is also the biggest. This isn't as enormous as a BMW X7 or a Land Rover Defender 130, but it is a little bit longer than a BMW X5 and incidentally is almost exactly the same size as a Kia EV9. I say incidentally, but really that's no accident at all, because Hyundai and Kia are sister brands, of course, and they often share the same underpinnings and powertrains in their models, and that is exactly what's happened here. But although this has quite a lot in common with the EV9, as I'll explain later on, there are also some pretty big differences, including the looks. Now, we would class this as an SUV because it's 1.8 metres tall and it also has more ground clearance than, say, a regular hatchback. But from some angles, including this one, I'd actually say it looks more like a Volvo Estate, especially with these tall taillights with a kink on the shoulder line there. Perhaps I'm going mad. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Anyway, because this is a curvier and altogether less boxy design than the EV9, and thanks to some other clever features like these active flaps down here, which only open when the drive system and the battery need cooling, the Ioniq 9 is more aerodynamic. So if you go for the entry-level model and you have digital door mirrors, then the coefficient of drag is 0.259. That's not going to worry a Toyota Prius, but for a big SUV like this, it's actually very impressive. And even if you don't have those digital door mirrors, which, to be honest, I find quite annoying because it's very difficult to judge distances compared with a conventional glass mirror, then the drag coefficient is still 0.269, which is quite a bit better than the 0.28 of the EV9. Now, if you're thinking, stop giving me tiny numbers that don't really mean anything, what are the actual benefits? What it all essentially means is that the Ioniq 9 has to use less energy to drive itself along the road, and that's particularly important in an electric car because it means a longer range. But there's more, because this also has a bigger battery than the EV9 with a usable capacity of around 106 kilowatt hours. And that means if you go for the single motor rear-wheel drive version and 20-inch alloys, then the official range is up to 385 miles. And that's very impressive. The best the EV9 can manage is 349 miles, and even the more expensive Volvo EX90 can only do 375 miles officially. Of course, the official ranges of all electric cars are pretty much impossible to achieve, even in mild summer weather. At the moment, it is -1. This is a twin motor version of the Ioniq 9 and it has 21-inch alloys, so the official range drops to 372 miles, and I still have about 250 miles to go today, so I think it's about time I got on the road. Right, we are about 100 kilometers or 60 miles into our journey, and it is looking good in terms of getting to our destination for tonight in Busan without charging up, because I have, according to the sat-nav, 325 kilometers to go, and the car is telling me I have 461 kilometers of remaining range. Now, so far we have been doing fairly low speeds on the motorway, between 80 and 100 kilometers an hour, but a few moments ago we have started to pick up speed. We're doing 110 kph at the moment, so perhaps that indicated range will start to fall. But at the moment, as I say, looking promising. And in other respects, this is a generally relaxing and easygoing car to drive at these sorts of speeds. You get laminated side windows not only in the front but also on the second row, and combined with that relatively slippery shape, it means there isn't much wind noise at all. The Ioniq 9 also has foam-filled tyres to help reduce the amount of road noise. There is still a little bit, but the road surfaces aren't particularly great out here. They are actually worse than the UK on the motorway, and that is quite an unusual thing to say. Also, it does seem that this car has slightly firmer suspension than the EV9, which, as I've already mentioned, shares a lot in common with this car. So the ride is a little unsettled at these sorts of high speeds. Not terrible, but not as plush, not as luxurious as it is in some of the best luxury SUVs. One of the reasons for that might be because the Ioniq 9 isn't available with air suspension. You can't even add it as an option, whereas a lot of European rivals are, and that just helps manage the enormous weight of a big SUV like this and makes the ride a little bit more sophisticated and a little plusher. But overall, as I say, this is quite a relaxing car to drive on the motorway. Okay, it's almost dark and we are sitting in some heavy traffic on the way into Busan now. We are a couple of kilometers away from our hotel, but we've made it pretty easily in the end actually. But we will talk more about numbers tomorrow. Tomorrow I will also be having a good look around the interior of the new Ioniq 9, finding out how practical it is and also what it's like to drive on some twistier roads. But now, let's get to our hotel, plug in, so we've got plenty of juice for the return journey back to Seoul in the morning. Okay, it's day 2 and we have a fully charged Ioniq 9 ready for the trip back to Seoul. But before we set off, we need to talk about a few things, starting with charging. Now, Hyundai is arguably a little bit misleading on this front, because if you look at the specs for this car, you will see that it can go from 10 to 80% in just 24 minutes from a 350 kilowatt charger. Now, 350 kilowatts is really, really quick. It's faster than a Porsche Taycan. This can't actually charge that fast though. It can charge at speeds of up to about 250 kilowatts, which is still very, very quick. This has the same 800 volt electrical architecture that we've seen in the Kia EV9, but also the smaller Hyundai Ioniq 5. Now, if you're charging at home from a usual 7 kilowatt wall box, then you'll be waiting around 17 hours for a 0 to 100% charge. That's a long time, but that is to be expected. This is a big car with a big battery and a very long range after all. Now, when it comes to storing the charging cable, you can put it in the boot. I'll show you that in a minute, but you can also put it under the bonnet at the front here. So this front boot or frunk or fruit or whatever you want to call it is pretty big actually. On the all-wheel drive model, which this is, there is 52 litres of storage space here. If you go for the rear-wheel drive model, then you get even more. You get 88 litres of storage. So that's not just enough for the charging cable, it's enough for a few soft bags as well. And as you'd expect for such a big car, the main boot is absolutely huge. There is 1,300 litres, or just over, of storage space in this configuration here. There is also some underfloor storage, not a huge amount, but if you don't want to put the charging cables under the bonnet, you can quite easily fit them in there. You will also see there are a few buttons on the wall of the boot, and if I press these two here, then a third row of seats rises from the boot floor. Now, all versions of the Ioniq 9 come with 3 rows of seats as standard. And even in this configuration, there is still 620 litres of luggage space. Those measurements are to the roofline rather than to the load cover, because this particular car doesn't have a load cover, but you will get one of those as standard in the UK. And these are not just token third row seats like you'd find in a Nissan X-Trail or perhaps even a Peugeot E5008. I'm just over 6 feet tall, and as you can see, even if I sit bolt upright, not even the bobble of my hat is brushing on the ceiling there, so that's really, really impressive. I've also got loads of legroom. This seat here is slid as far forward as it will go at the moment, but I'm a good inch or so away from the seat back with my knee. And even if someone were to slide that seat back a bit, I still would be pretty comfortable. I also have a nice comfy armrest here with a cup holder in it. I can even adjust the angle of the seat back if I want a more relaxed seating position. And I've also got a good view out thanks to plenty of glass at the side there. Now, you may have noticed that this car has 2 seats on its second row. In the UK, you'll get 7 seats as standard, so a 3-person bench on the middle row. But if you go for range-topping calligraphy trim, which is what this car is, then you also have the option of a couple of 6-seater layouts. One of those has swiveling seats, so you can spin these seats all the way around so they face the passenger on the 3rd row, or you can have them at 90 degrees to make fitting a child seat easier. Alternatively, you can have these premium relaxation seats, which are very comfortable indeed because you get an adjustable armrest with some massaging controls on it. I can turn this seat into a business class style bed if I fancy a snooze while I'm being driven along. These seats can also be heated or ventilated, and there is a separate air conditioning zone for rear passengers back here. On top of that, I have a nice big screen here that, thanks to Hyundai's new features on demand debuts on the Ioniq 9, I can watch Netflix or YouTube. There are 2 big cup holders in the door here. I have a sunblind that I can raise to keep unwanted eyes from peering in, and there's lots of storage back here too. So I've got a pocket on the back of the front seat there. There is an enormous storage compartment that slides out of the center console there, and I can even access the storage compartment under the central armrest because it opens not only from the front but from the back here as well. And space is really impressive. This seat is slid forwards as far as it will go, as it was when I was sitting in the 3rd row, and this seat in the front of me is set up for my driving position. And as you can see, I've still got absolutely loads of knee room and loads of headroom. So whichever seating configuration you go for, you can be sure that you'll have not only lots of space, but lots of luxury in the back. Right, into the front, and the first thing I will mention is that you get the same premium relaxation seats here as I just showed you in the back. More importantly though, the driving position is excellent. The seat and the steering wheel line up well with one another. You've got a nice big pedal area around there so you can stretch out on longer journeys, and the seat itself is actually really comfortable too. Visibility is also very impressive, other than these digital mirrors, which, as I mentioned earlier, I don't personally get on with. I don't know anyone who does, but because you sit high up, you get a good view down the road ahead. These pillars aren't too chunky, so you've got a good view out at junctions as well and out of the side here. So all of that, very, very good. Now, this infotainment system, other than the features on demand system that I showed you in the back a moment ago, is pretty much the same as you'll find on lots of other Hyundai models. So it's not the best infotainment system in the world, but it's pretty easy to use because it's curved towards me. Even though this right-hand side of the screen is quite far away, it's not actually too much of a stretch to reach it. Now, one of the criticisms we have about the Kia EV9 is that the air conditioning panel is a silly touchscreen here, and it's pretty much impossible to see because it's blocked by the rim of the steering wheel. Thankfully, Hyundai has gone for a completely different design with some physical controls down here in the middle of the dashboard. We're always a fan of physical controls when it comes to air conditioning, and if I want to adjust the temperature when I'm driving along, all I do is just twist the knob there. Very, very simple and very, very easy to see. There are some icons in the middle here, but they are for less frequently used functions, so that's not a big deal. Storage is excellent, just like it was in the back. Under here, you have what looks like a pretty decent sized cubby to start with, but then you realise that if you pop this tray out here, then there is absolutely loads of space down there. 5.3 litres, I'm told by Hyundai. There are 2 cup holders just in front of this. This whole assembly actually can be slid back and forth, and there is another hidden storage compartment down here so you can keep your wallet or your phone out of sight. On top of that, there is another tray here with a wireless charger on it, and the glove box is absolutely massive, and there's another tray just at the top there. Now, interior quality, not usually a strength of Hyundai, and in here, this isn't the most luxurious, the most premium feeling SUV that you'll ever sit in, but it's the best that we've seen so far from the Korean brand, a step above even the latest Santa Fe. Yes, there are plenty of hard plastics in here, including this silver sprayed finish on the top of the dashboard. That's not particularly upmarket, but there also are plenty of soft touch materials in here, including the very top of the dashboard up here and the insides of the doors. So although you're not going to be blown away by the quality of the interior, it looks smart and it feels pretty well screwed together. But we've got a long journey ahead of us, so it's about time we hit the road. Okay, we are about halfway to Seoul now, and we've taken a slight detour off the motorway through a national park to find some twistier roads, because so far we've been driving mostly in straight lines. And this is a big, heavy SUV. You wouldn't expect it to be particularly agile, and in truth, it isn't. So the steering's quite slow. There is a fair amount of body lean when you're going around corners, particularly tight ones. So really this handles more like a Land Rover Defender than an Audi Q7, but that's probably not going to bother that many buyers, because after all, this is a 7-seat family car, not a sports SUV, and it's not even trying to be. Now, the entry-level rear-wheel drive version has a single 215 brake horsepower electric motor, and it's not especially quick. We haven't tried it yet, but officially it can do 0 to 60 in around 9.5 seconds. If you go for this long-range all-wheel drive version, then that has about 300 brake horsepower, so it's quite a bit quicker. But there is also a performance version, and that has nearly 430 brake horsepower and can do 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds. We haven't tried it yet, but that sort of performance in a car like this is probably overkill, so I can't imagine it's going to be particularly popular back in the UK. Anyway, let's head back to Seoul, crunch some numbers, and find out how efficient this version of the Ioniq 9 is. So we made it back to Seoul, and it was a lot tighter getting back today than it was going out to Busan yesterday. We made it back with just 2% of battery remaining. Yesterday, we got out to Busan with 19% left. And the difference, of course, is that today we made a detour for some country road driving, and that added a few miles to the journey, and there was some slightly faster driving too. And that does show that trips of more than 250 miles are easily achievable in the Ioniq 9, even on very cold days like today, and when you're doing mostly motorway driving. And when you factor in the fast charging that it offers, then it is a great EV for doing long distances in. Now, what about the numbers? Well, yesterday we did a total of 259 miles, and according to the trip computer, averaged 3 miles per kilowatt hour. Today, we did 267 miles at an average of 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Again, that detour for some country road driving, which involved some hills, definitely didn't help. Now, neither of those efficiency figures are amazing by wider EV standards, but remember, it's been very cold. We've been driving mostly on the motorway, and of course, this is a very big and heavy SUV. So should you buy an Ioniq 9? Well, Hyundai hasn't confirmed UK prices and specs yet, but it has told us that we can expect a price of around £2,000 below that of an equivalent EV9, which, when you consider that the Ioniq 9 has a longer range, then it actually looks pretty good value, at least compared with other fully electric SUVs. So if you are looking for a massive 7-seat fully electric SUV, then the Ioniq 9 should definitely be on your shortlist. Thanks for watching this review. If you want to watch a video on the Kia EV9, click up there. And for our full detailed written review on the Ioniq 9, click there.